As your ship launches at the beginning of Stage 1, 3 sentences intrude upon the screen before you're given control over your vessel. I will not die until I achieve something. Even though the ideal is high, I never give in. Therefore, I never die with regrets. I have died so many times in this game without achieving a single goddamned thing. And I have absolutely no regrets. I really didn't know much going into Ikaruga, or Ikaruga if you're a tryhard, which, based on this video's existence, I categorically am. A friend of mine whose game opinions I tended to trust said he'd heard it was a classic, and Donkey featured it pretty beautifully in one of his videos on game difficulty. It was $10 on Steam, and I was in need of a game I could quickly pick up and play, so why not give it a whirl? The closest thing I've ever played to a bullet hell were a few sections in Automata, but I'd played a hard game or 3 before. How brutal could this thing possibly be? This isn't even how my first playthrough looked. I wish I'd had the forethought to record that first fateful hour. I went in thinking that it would be worth trying to learn this game legitimately, really earn my progress through each stage, so I buckled down, died a couple of times, and eventually made my way through Ikaruga's first level without a single explosion, like these ones. That wasn't too bad, that was perfectly doable. Let's see how, So, upon quickly running out of lives, I took the Dunkelman's advice, bumped it up to 5 lives with unlimited continues, and promptly flung myself directly back onto the buzzsaw. But the thing is, it was still really fun. It was cool and intimidating and full of striking mechanical designs and held together by beautiful art direction. I saw a ton of awesome shit that I couldn't even conceptualize surviving, and the next morning, I woke up and I ran through the whole thing again. I also learned that if you change the settings, the game doesn't record your deaths. Oh well. Over the next couple of days, I'd find myself firing it up every once in a while for a quick playthrough. And, with curiosity getting the better of me, I gave YouTube a quick search for Ikaruga Perfect Playthrough, which led to this video, posted by Kiko Skullkid. And what I witnessed therein was like letting the edible hit while watching Hatsune Miku take a flamethrower to the Sistine Chapel. Stupid idea gremlin began to incubate within the core of my hellbrain. What if I played through this game just once, every day? A full run is about 25 minutes, roughly a single episode of TV. I mean, obviously I'm never going to be on this guy's level, but how good would I get? I clearly have room for improvement, but realistically, how much better would I be if I kept this game up? So, for the next week or so, I didn't miss a single day, grinding my face directly into the sandpapery heel of Treasure's 2001 Danmaku masterpiece without fail, which gave rise to yet another cursed idea gremlin within the ever-fertile matryoshka of the first idea gremlin. Terrible sentence, what the fuck am I doing? What if I did this shit every day for a year? The answer being, of course, a third, more nagging gremlin. You make a goddamn video about it. Do you forget about the economic system you live under? Productivize your leisure!
She said, we'll take a break from your pet lizard's Instagram account. I said, I can't! It's my sole source of income!
So, yeah, I went ahead and played Ikaruga every day for an entire year. There's a critical lack of content about this classic, so let's talk about it.
Does it seem like the world is in a real place? That's what I thought until I fell into the river.
Wait, hold up. There's an asterisk on this one. So, a few weeks into my self-imposed stay in the daily Ikaruga gulags, one of my good buds, my friend, my pal, my dog got married. Congratulations, dude. That being said, I did forget to play Ikaruga the night of his rehearsal dinner, though I did somehow remember on the night of the actual wedding when I got home at 4 a.m. absolutely turgid with champagne. Great wedding, dude.
Blessings of Akatash upon ye.
That was in October of 2021, which is definitely way more than a year ago at this point, so it doesn't really count as a missed day if you just push back the start date a little. There is, however, one unavoidable blemish on my record. Towards the end of July 2022, in which I streamed Disco Elysium for the first time and got so sucked into the game that I went far later than anticipated, experienced some player-protagonist synchronicity, and fucking crashed right after my stream, completely forgetting to get my daily run in. I did an extra playthrough the following day as penance. This is my asterisk, this is my inverted cross to bear, and if it disqualifies this entire video from your viewership, I understand. Last year, another dog of mine got married and overseas, but I was determined not to make the same mistake twice. So, after completing my daily run, boarding a red-eye flight, following it with a train ride chaser, and dragging my sleep-deprived corpse through a wine and tapas tour, I took in the sights of Valencia, Spain, by asking yet another dog to hand me his laptop, upon which was installed a copy of Ikaruga I had gifted him via Steam. 6 entire days and nights were spent in Spain, and I found time to Ruga during all of them. When I finished writing the script and got sick and couldn't record voiceover I was happy with for like 2 fucking months, I continued to Ruga. I have put in the work. I have shown my dedication, and my dedication goes exactly as far as playing this game every day regardless of circumstance and no further. I haven't set aside time to learn specific strats outside of my runs, I haven't isolated particular levels to learn them, I just spent an entire year with an asterisk. Finding a moment between waking and sleeping to sit down and say, well, time to be a gamer today, forcing myself yet again through the cheese grater that is this game. I've continued playing the game daily as I write, record, and edit this video, and will only be freed from this curse upon the video's release, so let's finally shut the fuck up about me and start talking about Ikaruga. Ikaruga is a classic shoot-'em-up, or shmup, or more specifically, a bullet hell, or danmaku, or bullet curtain shooter, I am apparently told. I don't know shit about this genre, as mentioned before, and will not perform any further research. I know Treasure made a game called Radiant Silvergun, which sounds fucking rad as hell as far as titles go, but I've been perfectly engrossed with the one shooty, explodey, haha, my reflexes are garbage game, and thus far have yet to fully feel the calling of yet another masochism mission. It functions as you'd expect. Top-down view, shoot straight forward, die if you touch fucking anything, but with a twist. All ships are black or white, and shoot shots of their respective colors, but your ship uniquely has the ability to switch between the two. You have a shield which absorbs shots of your own color, making some of those bullet curtains the danmaku subgenre gets its name from a non-issue, even an asset. With the right shield up, you can charge directly in, bumping up your score and filling your energy reserves while you're at it. The game lacks any sort of alternate fire mode, but you can dump that stored energy into these homing lasers which travel through obstacles. Your shots change color with you, and double their damage to any enemies of the opposite color. Yin, yang. Shoot, shot. It's a simple enough setup, and the game's optional Attract Mode tutorial delivers all this information and more succinctly. But those simplistic mechanics belie just how much game the developers are able to milk out of them. Despite its short runtime, Ikaruga's 25 minutes contain a constant barrage of new situations and patterns, meticulously crafted obstacle courses that take full advantage of its mechanics. The level of pacing on offer is unreal, with a brand new challenge presenting or iterating upon itself every couple of seconds. So I want to talk about it. This video is less a review of Ikaruga and more of a way for me to babble in awe over the deluge of concentrated peak game design present across its 5 stages, so if you're really concerned about playing this game spoiler-free, go for it. I'd highly suggest for you to do what I did, try and learn stage 1 legit, and after you succeed and are subsequently crushed by reality, crank up the continues and run through the whole thing. See the enormity of the task before you, and then you can come back and maybe pick up a few tips or tricks. The part that killed me the first time I got to stage 2? That was before the point where I considered the game to start getting hard. That was still the easy part. It gets so much worse. It will make you into a god.
My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart, I want to eat his children. Praise be to Allah.
Take the hashtag Ikaruga challenge. Ha! I really wouldn't recommend anybody to actually do this. But maybe play it a few times and see how good you can get. It's super rewarding, and it's something I'd never have experienced if the game didn't just let me put on unlimited continues. It speaks highly to the merits of accessibility, as much as people hate talking about it, and the only criticism I had for this game on that level is that I feel like severe color blindness would probably be an issue, but I can't speak to that myself. I actually took a pause from writing this essay and tried searching for actual lived experiences from colorblind people regarding this specific game and found absolutely none. I saw a few quotes that said colorblindness is a spectrum and Ikaruga's two colors are distinct in brightness as well as hue, so it's probably okay, but also these aren't actual lived experiences from colorblind people, so who knows. I did find a ton of people posting their own shmups inspired by the color absorbing mechanic and then facing questions from colorblind gamers about accessibility options, so, you know, I have gleaned no wisdom from this tangent beyond the fact that, holy shit, this is probably a major problem in a lot of games and nobody fucking talks about it. Oh, also, while we're suggesting improvements, borderless full screen. Please. Come on. This isn't an accessibility thing, it's just me being petty. Anyways, this last year has to have amounted to something, so allow me to show you the ever-exploding sights of Ikaruga. That little poem from the beginning shows up as you launch skyward, set to Hiroshi Iuchi's bombastic score, and this won't be the last time we witness poorly translated poetry. It's a key component to the fairly rigid 3-act structure this game's 5 stages all follow. You get a little quote to your first act, an intro that wakes up the player and theoretically warms them up for the meat of the stage. I call this part the run-up. It's usually fairly quick. The stage itself is the second and longest act, typically introducing a mechanical theme or 3 that escalate until you reach the end, at which point you deal with a boss. This isn't completely one-to-one, the first stage doesn't have much in the way of unique mechanical themes as it's an introduction to the game itself, and the 5th stage subverts this structure slightly, but the overall formula still sticks. The stage opens with a few simple waves of basic ships. They're just target practice, but even here there are tiny optimizations to practice and ways to potentially get yourself killed while learning them. You see, upon death, enemies will fire back at you depending on the difficulty. On normal, which is what I've been playing for the last year, this triggers anytime an enemy is killed by their own color. It's a fairly wide spread that's easy enough to dodge from afar, but you don't need to because your shield is already set to absorb these retaliation shots. All this potential obstacle course amounts to is free score and charge, but to optimize how much beam juice you can slurp up, you need to get right up in a ship's face as it's killed. As these boys are on the frail side, this means charging straight forward, but misjudge how fast you're killing them and you can easily get cocky and crash. You get a few basic waves to practice switching colors before you're presented with twin phalanxes of tiny ships. It's a nice little non-threatening finale to the intro of the first stage, an opportunity to live the fantasy of absolutely mowing down rows of ships. But even here, the game's giving players learning opportunities, namely with the game's combo system.
Savage skill, smoking sexy style.
Lord have mercy, I'm about to bust.
Of course this game has a combo system in case you've been fiending for more puzzle in your shmup. It's deceptively simple. Kill 3 ships of the same color in a row and your chain goes up. Keep up this pattern and your score increases exponentially. A deathless playthrough of stage 1 that fails to maintain a combo might end with a score in the hundreds of thousands, but my best runs have crushed the 2 million mark, and those were A's and A+. This game's rankings go all the way up to S++, a feat I frankly don't ever see myself even approaching. I'd just be happy being able to consistently one-coin clear the thing. Anyways, if you're just holding the fire button when this wave shows up, you'll kill them indiscriminately, breaking your chain. If you hold your fire, you can move to one side and take them all out in one clean, systematic sweep. If you want to maximize your score, you can switch colors between groups in order to slurp up both genders of ship juice, wherein you'll likely learn yet another lesson. These retaliation shots make switching dangerous. The combo system and potential lesson about switching shields in the middle of a minefield come together to drive home the lesson that the real Ikaruga Pro sometimes lays off the trigger. This is a lesson I've only really internalized for stage 1. I can tell there are moments in later stages where I should be more judicious about when my gun go off, but I'm fighting for my life out here, and any optimizations I've learned have been about survival, not score. There's another little mechanic here, bonus ships. Clear these two groups fast enough and you'll spawn in a few waves of easy one-hit kill ships, conveniently placed in groups of 3. It's a fun way for the game to reward competent play, less of an adaptive difficulty solution and more of a free victory lap, some flex time for skilled players. As our titular ship nears the camera, ascending from some sort of rad sky tube, we get our title card. Chapter 1, Ideal. Alas, Ikaruga is going. Undesired, unwanted them. What makes them go? It is nothing else than the principle of the man who has the reason for being. The translation here is very rough. It really does feel like someone set up us the bomb, but from the mangled corpse presented to us, we can still scavenge a few tattered, decaying bits of metaphor. You know, determination through adversity and all of that. With that, we're done with the intro of the first stage of the game, and I swear we're going to pick up the pace here. As usual, these things are pretty front-loaded with mechanical exposition, but most of the first stage is fairly straightforward. You get a preview of the waves you're about to fight through, the armada waiting below, before you get a fun reprise of the intro, only now the ships shoot back. After a few charge at you, you get some stationary ships that will pivot as you move around, this game's first instance of deterministic enemy behavior based on the player's actions. These have been in easy waves of 3, but the game throws a curveball with this group of 6. This is one of those aforementioned spots that force you to stop firing just for a second in order to keep your chain going. Again, you're not going to see much of that from me in the later stages, so drink it in while you can. A few more waves fall to you as you pierce the atmosphere and see a lush forest below before the game gives you its first real precision aiming test. These 8 rows of balls are ripe for the popping and can be mowed down mindlessly, but if you're looking to get your pogs off, it'll take some fancy flying. They're arranged into rows of 4 and 2, which will periodically swap places with each other, requiring quick bursts of fire down a straight line with math core levels of type timing. I've learned that my best bet is to time my first shots so that they're passing over the ships right as their hitboxes become active. They just kinda lift themselves up into a death curtain. Adjust my position while the ships flip, take out the next 2 for a group of 6, and then mow down the 6 black ships on the right. Repeat the process on the left, and you'll see that I've just spent an entire paragraph talking about how you can maintain your combo for literally 5 seconds of gameplay. I'm not going to do this for every tricky section in the game, but I love putting the spotlight on these microcosms of game design. The skill ceiling on this thing is incomprehensibly high, and so much of that comes down to expert enemy placement, barraging you with new and unique setups and opportunities to do better, both for the sake of your combo and for the sake of not dying. These 5 ships are easy to kill, hard to combo. The first 3 move away quickly, but you have to kill all 3 black ships before the 2 remaining white ones so you can complete the chain with the upcoming big boy who rises up and starts a fire in his laser. Lasers aren't an issue as long as you're set to the right color, but the game isn't ready to start really playing around with those just yet. For now, this is just a tease and some free charge. A rapidly spinning set of balls provide a quick timing challenge before you descend into yet another techno tube. The pattern here is manageable and fairly easy to brute force, but this is still a spot where I find myself struggling to perform better than I already have. In the center, you have tiny ships zippered together. If you're feeling especially cocky, you can zigzag between them and take out the 3 of one color, but I certainly can't be fucking bothered to. On the other sides, larger carriers will make their way to the bottom of the screen and then start spraying like crop dusters. They're easy to kill if you get the jump on them, but that means spending less time on their tiny backup in the middle, who by the second wave are double helixing something fierce. Again, this is simple enough to fire and forget, but if you really want to unlock the pro strats, you can fire down the middle during gaps in their movement to take out one color first, only, again, I can't be fucking bothered anytime I try pulling this off. I stall for too long and then suddenly one of the larger ships is breathing down my neck, and now I'm not just losing my combo, I'm losing my life. I'm dying on stage 1 of Ikaruga like a pathetic, unworthy baby gamer bitch. Anyways, if you're fast enough, you have a chance for some bonus ships here, and then a warning plays.
Warning! The big enemy is approaching at full throttle. According to the data, it is identified as, what's it the guy? No refuge.
Translation continues to be on one, as does the soundtrack, as does the mechanical design as we face down a whole-ass mobile suit with this game's first boss, Eboshirori. The white mech aims its great blade at you and just starts shooting bullets from it. Cool sword. Switch to the opposite color from the start and you'll break it before you even need to start dodging shots. That's phase 1. Phase 2 switches to a shield, which fires a spiral of black shots at you. In every phase, Eboshidori has these little drones that fire shots of the opposite color you're likely to be dodging, preventing players from just putting on the safer shield and wading mindlessly through the rainstorm. Taking these guys out is hella optional. There's no chain counter for bosses, and you can speed past this phase by simply going into the boss with full energy. Switch to white for double damage and release as soon as this phase starts, toss in a few normal shots, and you'll again barely have to dodge anything before the phase is over. The final phase has the boss throwing out grenades of both colors. They don't actually have hitboxes themselves, meaning you can fly directly over them and absorb all the projectiles as soon as they spawn. Combine these with the large homing shots the boss will throw at you, and you can easily build up a full charge again. Just make sure you're switched over to black before releasing, and the final phase will be over with exactly 69 seconds left on the timer. Say it with me now. Nice. It's a pretty approachable first stage, and doesn't ask anything too crazy from you to just scrape by, but even a year in, there are segments that legitimately intimidate me, which should speak volumes to how cosmically high this game's skill ceiling is. And that was just the beginning. We careen across a city skyline as the intro to Stage 2 begins. Some obligatory warm-up balls make for an easy combo if you're able to juggle positioning your line of fire and dodging their shots. Then the fighters come in, and that combo goes right out the window. These tiny ships swarm you in daring, arcing patterns, easily getting behind you and cutting off your retreat as they slowly pepper the screen with little popcorn balls. I still have not managed to conceptualize the way these loops intersect with each other. All I know is that this section still scares me far too much to ever let go of the fire button or, God forbid, attempt to switch. Two ships rise to the top of the screen, firing lasers that create a deadly hallway that will funnel more fighters towards you. Another instance in which I know I should lay off the trigger for a second, maybe keep the laser dudes alive, but attempting this will only lead to everything overwhelming me and costing me a life. A few more waves of fighters and the chapter's title card comes into play. Chapter 2. Trial. The stronger will you have, the more you face various trials. Although you can choose to escape, Trial has the message for you to conquer yourself. Well shit, let's be determined. Our ship plunges into the heart of the city, towards the depths of some sort of industrial facility, where we quickly find ourselves surrounded by concentric rings of alternating colored balls. If you want to maintain a combo here, it'll take some precision shooting that always feels neat to pull off, and if you're fast enough, then you'll spawn in a ring or three of bonus ships. If you want to be a gamer about it, you can pop a hole in the perimeter and slip out, then take out a ring all at once as they converge. There was one point when I was doing my daily playthrough while watching It's Always Sunny on my other monitor, and this part synced up in a really fun way.
And then, naturally, bang.
Next, we have a veritable checkerboard of black and white boxes, requiring you to shoot your way through and navigate around these unbreakable pillars. Once you clear the first stretch and break through this wall of white cubes, you can pass through a gate and onto a devious twist on the old setup. Invincible blocks will regularly travel down the center, forcing you to the sides where invincible turrets constantly fire bullets to limit your movement. Breakable boxes will show up in the center, tempting you to take them out to increase your score, and balls will charge you from the sidelines, but you can deal with all of this pretty easily using the one technique I was actually able to pick up from Kiko Skull Kid's video. Moving back and forth diagonally like this optimizes how much energy you can build up, allowing you to laser everything. With proper timing, you can even maintain a combo here, though I'm still extremely far away from being able to do it consistently. Another gate opens and we finally get to the point where I consider this game to start getting hard. Up until now was baby shit, but here you enter a solid minute of constantly being barraged by alternating spirals of bullets from both sides. Switching here is a nightmare, especially if you're trying to take out enemy ships while you're at it, and it took me months upon months to start to figure out this section. The key is preemptive bullet eating, racing ahead and using large circular sweeps to take out bullets before they can be a problem, giving you patches of safety with which you can deal with issues as they come. If you keep this up and take care to only switch in the safe zones you've claimed, you can start moving around a little more freely, popping balls as they come in and dealing with larger ships that will swoop in to laser you. These lasers are another good teaching tool for anticipatory movement. You need to make sure you're far back enough where absorbing it won't push you into bullets of the wrong color. This will usually give you enough charge to finish them, but release at the wrong time and their retaliation shots will make switching impossible and get you killed. Only rev up the Itano Circus on these big guys when you have plenty of breathing room. The resulting obstacle course from their death is too much to handle otherwise. A lot of discourse about fairness in games seems to center around situations that you can't get out of. Most games nowadays seem to provide at least limited access to instant invincibility frames, however brief, which, with the right timing, can save players from a seemingly impossible situation. And it is true that your ship's hitbox is shockingly small, allowing you to thread the needle and survive most dangerous encounters, but there's also a large focus on not creating these situations for yourself in the first place. Sometimes you can paint yourself into a corner and die for it. Sometimes you maneuver yourself into a dead end. It's refreshing for a game to reward this kind of thinking, to nurture tactics and positioning when so many games seem to be moving away from them. It also explains why this section took me so long to get down. Preemptively going out of your way to absorb enemy shots is risky, but it's a risk that ultimately makes things safer and more consistent. Learning this required me dying a lot because, again, there was no instant easy out for me to fall back on. If I fuck up here, I seal my fate. There was a time when I was actually dying on this stage more often than I was when I started this fool's errand. I was doing worse, but I was on my way to doing better. Progress isn't always a straight line, and sometimes it's invisible. In learning a new skill, in mental health, in content creation, and certainly in Ikaruga. Also, this is the second fucking level. And in the grand scheme of things, the game is barely actively trying to kill you here. The bullet spirals continue as you're forced to choose between a left or right path. There are breakable cubes forming a barrier, but the only way to destroy them is with homing lasers. Energy management is hugely important exactly for moments like these. Run out of energy at a part you're used to having it, and you'll find yourself scrambling to improvise. And, just like in comedy, improv is never going to work out well for you.
Strawberries. Pineapple.
If you do break open the divider, you might have made things harder for yourself, as you now have both colors of bullet spirals to deal with, but I find that smart switching and a slow zigzag back and forth across the screen allows me to stay alive and shoot the interceptor ships while I'm at it. The segment ends with these ship spawners and 2 looping rings of balls. I can tell there's a way to combo these, but I'm always too busy breathing a sigh of relief to learn how to do it. Absorb some lasers for full energy, pop some potential bonus ships, and you're right onto the game's second boss, Buposu. It's our first and most direct instance of yin-yang symbolism, but it also helpfully highlights its weak points for us, the slut. At least it has the decency to cover them back up. The bulwarks blocking Bupo's bits can only be yoinked open by the right color of shot, and even then, you still need to fly around to the other side before firing. It's another training exercise in disguise. You have a very limited amount of time to deal damage before the hatch completely closes, potentially taking you out with it. If you want to maximize your progress in the limited window of opportunity you've just made for yourself, you need to switch to the opposite color to hit twice as hard. If you pry the hatch all the way open, switch for double damage, release a full charge of homing lasers, and immediately start hitting the boss with your regular shots, dodging the popcorn it fires to throw you off your game while still hitting your target with an ever-shrinking window of navigable space, you can just barely take out one of the 2 weak points before the hatch closes, essentially one-cycling this first phase. Doesn't it look absolutely effortless? By this point, the boss will pop out these little mandible things, which will fire out rings of alternating shots before switching to full-on barrage mode. The circular shots have large enough gaps to let you get in a few safe switches and pry open the second hatch. Ideally, you can do so before the mandibles start spraying and praying. Absorb all of these shots and fire them off as lasers, switch and loop around to do the same on the other side, and pull off one final, extremely risky switch to absorb a couple more white shots and hopefully laser this thing to death. This boss has other moves, but I consistently kill it with 79 seconds left on the clock, so I simply don't know how to deal with the rest of it. Either way, this is a really cool boss that takes total advantage of Ikaruga's unique mechanics to train players on the necessary skills to get them through the rest of the game. The main gist of your strategy should be obvious from your first encounter, but it'll take multiple runs to start piecing it all together. The satisfaction of taking this thing down in roughly 20 seconds is completely worth it, however. Get fucked, Bupo. You probably don't know shit about the bass guitar.
I'm not stupid. I'm smarter than you!
Stage 3's run-up has another nice mix of deterministic and static enemy behavior to open you up. These balls encircle each other and take precise shooting to combo, shooting I'm currently incapable of, and these kamikaze bombers fly down and approach you from the sidelines. They'll only hone in on you once they reach the same horizontal plane as you, so if you stray too far forward, they can easily get behind you and cut off your retreat. Inch forward and immediately back up if you want to bait them out. Leading kamikaze ships with your movement like this will become very important later on, so it's worth getting in some practice now. The remainder of the third stage's intro really establishes lasers as this stage's mechanical theme. As you navigate the twisted interior of yet another floating facility, these moving structures will gate your way forward via giant fuck-off laser beams. These are easily passed through using the right color shield, but as before, they're still an incredible source of energy, allowing you to completely clear the way forward if you stay in their beam for a few seconds. This will force you to learn another lesson, however. Lasers push you into obstacles if you are not constantly adjusting your position to compensate. I particularly like this part where you just get double teamed by two lasers of the same color. They just collectively smush you while you can go ham on your own homing shots. Get slapped around by a few more beams, slap around these little ships that I can't be bothered to take the time to combo, and you're done with the Stage 3 run-up. Chapter 3. Faith. There is no absolute in this mundanity. Occasionally, you get lost facing unreasonable burdens. In order to overcome, you need a firm conviction, penetration, and the ability to take action. Well, you heard the game. Let the penetration begin, and let it be firm. Things start out pretty standard: shoot some ships, do some switch, release some energy, easy does it. I alluded to this earlier, but I actually cleared Stage 3 without dying long before I was able to do so in Stage 2. The focus here is more on precision flying than it is tactical forethought, making it a gamble, but one that occasionally paid off. The preceding level, on the other hand, had a much harsher learning curve, but in the process left me far more capable of consistently beating it deathless, whereas Stage 3 still has me sweating for most of its runtime. Our mechanical theme for the stage rears its head yet again here, but first you might be distracted by this wall of balls. They look easy enough to shoot down until you realize you also have to deal with a barrage of lasers taking up most of the screen. Switch to the right color here or die, there is no alternative. Even then, you have to worry about getting pushed into the wall or picked apart by retaliation shots, but it's still easy enough to deal with once you know what's coming. Anticipate the lasers, get right up next to their sources, and let the beams push you to the other side of the tunnel as you fire. You should take out all the enemy ships while giving you enough space to maneuver and prepare for the next wave. You do this 4 times in total before the stage can actually start getting difficult, with a section I like to call the clencher.
How's that ass feel?
So first the game does the clenching for us, as the hallway you're in narrows significantly. Then you do the clenching when you realize you're being approached from both ends by ships of both colors. Time to chat up and zigzag your way down to the bottom of the screen as best as you can.
How low can you go?
Fire upwards to clear ships dropping in on you, keep popping your homing lasers to give yourself more space to work with, and see if you can reach the bottom of the screen.
Can you go down low?
You're welcome to unclench here, but you're not out of the woods yet. Welcome to the slalom. Use the oncoming ships to guide yourself around these poles. You have a stupidly narrow pathway to work with here. This set of barriers starts to close early, forcing players to the top of the screen just in time for a big snake mech to intrude from below. Thanks to its presence, you're prevented from moving too far back during the next slalom, but as soon as that's over, it'll charge forward, crushing you if you're unprepared. It's easy enough to avoid, muscle memory or no, but it's absolutely going to get you at least once. Have you unclenched yet? Well, that's really too bad, because that mech's in front of you, and it's about to show you its true colors, both of them. Welcome to the Lightning Snake.
Roll back the tears! Roll back the tears! Roll back the tears! The world ends with us! Roll back the tears! Roll back the tears!
The Lightning Snake is a motherfucker. So, Mr. Hiss over here has 2 faces and 4 orbs, colors split evenly down the middle, and if you want to take it down, you have to kill all of them. The orbs are the real problem, panning across the screen, firing constant streams of lightning towards you in a schnasty double helix. Lightning functions similar to beams, only it doesn't push you around at all, which is a blessing. You have enough to deal with here as is. Hover around the center, fire away, and switch whenever the lightning trails crisscross. Purposefully maneuvering yourself to absorb more lightning and fire off more homing lasers will make this section take far less time, but each orb you destroy speeds up the rate of fire for these little popcorn balls the center throws at you, because the lightning wasn't enough, apparently. This is a really tough and devious section. It's 300 cc's of raw anxiety injected directly into my vas deferens, but acing it makes me feel like a gaming demigod. Finished quickly enough, and you can treat yourself to some bonus balls which split upon getting shot. Thank fuck, you absolutely want to go into this boss with full energy. Because yeah, the Lightning Snake somehow wasn't the boss. Enter Outtro. Stage 3's boss is a ring of inward-facing turrets rotating and firing at you without stopping. Simply survive and fire back. It's initially overwhelming, but theoretically not too complicated. These impassable barriers circle around the center, alternating between moving inwards and outwards, providing potential cover, but also yet another obstacle to dodge. Every turret you kill gives you more breathing room, meaning the boss gets easier the longer it goes on, until you destroy half of the turrets and then it brings the lasers out, spinning them at an ever-increasing speed.
But will it blend?
Boss fights mercifully alleviate you of the game's chain system, but you still want to maintain a combo here if you want to survive. Dealing with both colors and the lasers simultaneously will absolutely murder the shit out of you, but if you just leave the white turret standing, you can easily absorb the lasers and blast everything with homing shots, hopefully clearing this phase in just a few seconds. Any longer and you will die a lot. This boss fucked me up for a while, it still does. It bears repeating here that you die in one hit in this game, including running into obstacles. And while that's terrifying, there's also something very liberating about that. When you've resigned yourself to dying repeatedly, your deaths become simply a one-to-one counter for your mistakes. And beyond losing whatever charge you might have built up, they never actually set your progress back. I've played plenty of difficult games where fucking up the beginning of a fight or level makes the rest of it irrelevant. Here I am playing Devil May Cry 5 a few months ago. I'm on my first ever playthrough of Dante Must Die difficulty, and I'm on Dante's second Urizen fight, a boss which walled me for roughly 6 hours across multiple streams. I know his moves in and out. I know how I want to deal with and counter them. It's just a matter of proper execution at this point, which is still a lot to demand of the player. Enemy health pools on Dante Must Die are ludicrously inflated. These first few sections of the fight will determine whether the entire rest of the battle is worth continuing. If I can get multiple royal guards off on this energy wave and deal enough damage immediately after without getting hit, I can build up enough DT and SDT to have a fighting chance for the rest of the battle. If I get hit even a few times, I'm at a huge disadvantage and might as well hit reset. At this point, I'm just trying to pull off a perfect opening to set myself up for the real battle. Similarly, if you're stuck on a tough boss or area in a Souls-like, taking a few bad hits and using a few healing items early might make you give up and call it a wash. You're already struggling on this boss with 5 Estus flasks, why even bother trying when you get to them with only 3? In Ikaruga, however, if I get absolutely wiped by a boss, if I eat shit for the entirety of a stage, if the lightning snake decides to pummel me like the trash goblin I am, that has no bearing on my potential performance for the rest of the run. And by this point, I'm already halfway through the game. I might as well finish it off, even if only for the sake of practice. I've had days where I've done absolute dog shit on the game's early stages, and then aced the later segment that used to torment me. My deaths in this game have no bearing on each other. They are independent, singular mistakes, though sometimes one bad death can snowball into multiple when it puts me into a position I'm not used to. But it's massively helpful to my mindset to know that fucking up in one moment will not prevent me from doing something cool later on. All this is to say that Stage 3 still often manages to destroy me, but that's never an excuse for poor performance in Stage 4. No, my performance in Stage 4 is poor because Stage 4 is hard and terrifying and demanding, and I suck at it. Stage 4 opens by making it clear that you're going to be limited to very narrow paths of movement for nearly the entirety of the stage. Ships fly in from above and below, firing in different colors. You need to either be very careful about your switching or do a lot of preemptive bullet eating and releasing in order to make it through. The goal is to always be clearing a new lane for yourself while minding the possibility of retaliation shots. Always be shooting, except for the times where it will prevent you from safely switching. This is a fairly scary opening, but thankfully we can rely on more inspiring words of determination to carry us through. Chapter 4: Reality. And reality is unveiled. What did it want? What did it see? What did it hear? What did it think? What did it do? I don't really have any jokes for this one. I'm just dumbfounded. The real schmeat of Stage 4 is front-loaded, and all concerns this circular structure at the center of this floating fortress space station thing. Slip in past these rotating blast shields to shoot at these balls, and oops, looks like you're caught in the death spiral.
Don't make unnecessary journeys! Don't take risks on treacherous roads! And don't swim in the sea!
You can pull back and hide behind the shields, but their movements leave you little space to work with, and more balls will quickly swarm the area, firing at you as they go. If you're trying to shoot them preemptively, they're at really awkward angles, so your best bet is diving right into the heart of the beast, which is... Yeah, early on in my journey, this is a point where I'd kind of just give up. This was way too much for my brain to conceptualize, and I accepted dozens of deaths here as immutable fact. Since then, I've gotten to the point where I can sneak through it unscathed roughly half of the time, but only by violently jettisoning all of my electrolytes through panic sweats. It is, however, a really cool and impressive section, and I want to break it down really quickly.
Please ensure that you have your copybook at hand, as you'll be asked to take down notes from the screen at various points throughout the program.
So again, I am currently leagues away from being able to maintain a combo throughout this section, but survival alone takes plenty of knowledge. You have little pockets of safety that are constantly intersecting with each other, and while you can occasionally slip through the cracks, it's not a strategy worth relying on. You will have to switch in order to safely navigate the death spiral, which, to be clear, lasts for a full minute of this. Switching to white allows you to move clockwise, whereas switching to black allows you to move counterclockwise. Just pace yourself and adjust your position in your little safe zones. Stay safe in the micro while working your way around the central structure in the macro. More balls will fly in to intercept and throw you off your game, so I found it helps to just keep shooting while you work your way up the side and back down. When you have a decent amount of energy built up, release it to give yourself some more space to work with and take out ships you can't get an angle on. The key is in knowing when to lay off the trigger for a second. You never want to be dodging retaliation shots as you switch. Stop firing at your own color if you're about to change colors, and likewise, only release your homing lasers after swapping. This segment is pure dual-colored anxiety, and every time it's over and done with, I breathe a sigh of relief. Now, you may unclench. Again, much like every other piece of advice I've given here, there are undoubtedly better ways to accomplish these things. I'm just reporting on the strategies I've found that enable me to survive. I have little to no knowledge of this game's wider meta, but I do know that I can live through this section with some degree of consistency, and I didn't get that sense of accomplishment for free. If you know a better way to do this, then make your own guide, please, I'm begging you. I want more people to play this game so I can impress them with my Mad Ruga skills. Stage 4 throws you a couple of freebies in the form of these ships flying overhead. You can perform some tricky flying and show off just how small your hitbox is before the blast shields start opening back up, and you have to do the exact same thing over again, only in reverse. Sorry, I lied about the unclenching. Start white, make your way slowly down to the bottom, pull a quick Rachel Dolezal, work your way back up, keep shooting, pop a few homing lasers, and a merciful 30 seconds later, you're done with Death Spiral version 2 and on to Death Spiral version 3, the Lightning Spiral. Electric Boogaloo over here deals with the same concept. One color prevents clockwise movement, the other prevents counterclockwise movement, but now there are no gaps to slip between and no space to 360 around the structure. Be smart with your switches, moving back and forth in a U-shaped pattern, and keep firing at the turrets providing the lightning in the first place. A full release will take out most of these in one go and make the remainder of this section much more tolerable. If you know what you're doing, this section lasts exactly long enough for anyone watching to freak out at what they're witnessing, and then it's over. The rest of Stage 4 is thankfully far chiller. You have a long and easy-to-survive wave of ships that I still haven't bothered figuring out the combo routes for, followed by an extended segment with turrets that constantly spawn in and move towards the center, firing shots deterministically towards the player. This used to be overwhelming and still looks very difficult to combo, but at this point I can make it through fairly easily without even using my homing lasers. It just takes some smart switching and moving in a figure 8 pattern. The turret section gets its own victory lap at the end with this last screen. These two at the top will fire shots that fan out over the whole screen, while 4 fire aimed shots at you from below. This is another spot where knowing what you're walking into solves the situation for you. A full charge can take out one turret instantly, at which point the other one is just free energy. It's as good a moment as any to praise this game's homing lasers. The way they arc out of your ship before accelerating towards their targets is beautiful, as is the little bounce to the launchers on the backside of your ship as they fire. There's something so majestic about watching these beams fan out before descending onto the turrets below, being showered in a fireworks display of retaliation shots. The visual design of this game is just so goddamn clean that it directly enhances the appeal of any high-level gameplay. It truly turns an impressive performance into art, and again, I highly encourage you to look up perfect playthroughs of this on your own. Thus far, you've mainly been clearing out the base of this floating fortress, but now it's time to head topside. The level rounds itself off with a few waves of kamikaze ships that can take some pretty intense threading of the needle to survive, but that's nothing compared to the boss. Misago is a cruel joke upon mankind and is yet another moment that absolutely broke me as a new player. This whole stage has been about navigating extremely narrow paths, filling the screen with more obstacle than workable space, so it's only fitting that its climax leans into this to the point of giving me an aneurysm. This entire thing is Misago, but you're trying to shoot this blue guy at its center. You have 3 paths here, each of which is blocked off by a set of 4 blast shields in alternating colors, each of which takes multiple shots to be downed. Naturally, this central structure also rotates, constantly adjusting the angles from which you can even damage it, and if that wasn't enough, the orb starts moving around independently, forcing you to seek refuge in these little pockets around the perimeter. I know, it's way too easy as is, so let's throw some lightning around the arena's perimeter, fully sealing the path between safe zones. This lightning moves towards the center and alternates colors, and you will often have to traverse 2 of these back to back, sometimes necessitating a perfectly timed switch between the 2. You cannot, in fact, stay in the safe zones, as the camera itself, combined with the boss's movement, will take your only refuges off-screen. And finally, just to really kick you in the dick, the boss shortly begins spraying sweeping bursts of machine gun fire at the entire death moat surrounding it. Ikaruga is, in some ways, ironically enough, a merciful game. Not only do I have unlimited lives here, but I've also learned, thanks to this very boss, that this game allows for a pacifist run. You can beat the whole thing without firing a single shot. Even here, apparently. Really? All bosses have a timer, and if you fail to kill them within that span, they will simply get bored and disappear on you. I was not attempting pacifism, I simply got overwhelmed and died too much to even begin making progress on this thing my first several tries, only moving on to stage 5 thanks to the allowances this game made for me at my pitiable level of incompetency. But that level of accessibility allowed me to ultimately build my way up to taking this thing down, legitimately, confidently, and within seconds. Not through patience, not through picking my spots and chipping away at this monster over minutes, but by charging forward like a Chad and dismantling it before it can become more of a problem. Here's how. Immediately hook left as soon as you gain control of your ship. Switch to black for double damage and begin firing up at this blast shield. If you're fast enough, you should be able to take it down fully before you have to switch and pass through your first lightning barrier, at which point you should already be firing at the black shield that's now up. Hopefully you can pass through another lightning barrier while firing. You want to use this gap here to switch. Pass through the lightning and take down the third barrier, and you'll have created just enough space for you to tuck your ship into. The lightning doesn't reach this far in, so if your timing and damage are on point, you can make it here without getting zapped, at which point you immediately switch back to white. Do not stop firing during any point in this process. Ideally, you want to take down this final blast shield in time to get a few shots into the core. If you're too slow here, you end up at a bad angle and are stuck with a half-finished blast shield and no way to shoot it. Hopefully you've also gone into this boss with full energy, so if you haven't died and lost it yet, you can use that to force open the final shield, or if you played your cards right, switch back to black to maximize your damage and let the core have it. This is the best scenario for this stage in the fight. Tucked into the top passageway as Misago spins, having already blown your load on directly damaging its health bar. You're not out of the woods yet, of course, you have to constantly adjust your positioning just to prevent the inner walls of the boss from destroying you, but the real fun starts when it adds lasers to the mix, forcing you to constantly push back against them while still avoiding a crash. This is probably the most the game ever asks of you in terms of constant positional micro-adjustments, and it takes the restrictive movement of the previous level to its absolute apex. You really feel like you're fighting for your fucking life as you constantly force your ship back against the beam, retaliating with repeated homing shots of your own. The beam lets up for a second once this passage reaches the bottom again. Save up for a full charge, switch to black for optimal damage, and you should be able to completely finish off the boss before the lasers start up again. So much goes into executing this plan, and yet, the end result lasts barely over 20 seconds. It's less than half a minute, but it's one of the most intense half minutes I've ever experienced. A tightrope act with a tighter deadline, one where a single mistake can doom the entire fight. I mentioned how one-hit deaths can be forgiving, but given the strict timing requirements for this fight, a single death could easily set me too far behind and make the battle spiral out of control into something utterly shameful. This is a fucked up boss, but more importantly, the game has built-in means for allowing anyone to experience it, and man, we talk about difficulty wrong. I think Dark Souls, or at least the focus on it and its ilk in conversations about video game difficulty, has really slapped some blinders onto the discourse. All of the conversations, the articles, the think pieces, the discourse seems to be tunnel-visioned towards the validity of higher skill floors, when Ikaruga shows that there's clearly something to be said for having a higher skill ceiling. This is an arcade game by design. Its difficulty obviously doesn't exist within a vacuum, but it was still released in 2001. Its life has primarily existed on home consoles. It's perfectly capable of sitting in someone's living room without constantly trying to shake them down for loose change. And allowing me to take on a challenge I should never be able to attempt, allowing me to see the entire thing through, still made a better gamer out of me, still pushed me and inspired me to really earn my sense of accomplishment. I would never be able to beat this game legitimately, but by letting me fumble and stumble my way through it, Ikaruga presented a different kind of challenge. Not bashing my head repeatedly against a wall, as the saying often goes, but instead forcing myself repeatedly through a cheese grater, shaving myself down until nothing but the most proficient gamesman remained. And while this approach might not be right for every game or every gamer, it's far more valid than it's being given credit for. Rant over. I just think that Stage 4, and in particular its boss, are a great example of the kind of intimidating challenge that this level of accessibility really benefits. And if I left all these little observations till the very end of the video, this thing's pacing would be hella lopsided. Either way, we have this game's final stage to get into now, and god does the soundtrack again just go the fuck off. You're thrown right into it with a hypercharged version of the Kamikaze Circle from the end of Stage 4. This time, a spiral of suicide ships teleport in around you before charging. This part is still very difficult for me, and I haven't worked out a fully reliable movement pattern here. All I can tell you is to make wide circles and release your homing lasers liberally. The next few waves seem to be designed to catch you releasing at a bad time. Just make sure you never blow up a wave right before you have to switch. There's another round of kamikazes, some homing shots, and you finally have these fucking pinatas of free energy. You have no reason to switch off white here, and popping one of these guys spawns a ring of balls to give you even more energy, so go to town.
I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
The faster you are here, the more of these you get the opportunity to kill. At this point, you're just trying to rack up your score because you're already on to the final boss. Final chapter. Metempsychosis. Finally, Karma returns to the place once belonged. It recalls the genesis of consciousness carved for abyss of memories. Hence, Ikaruga is going. That's right, Stage 5 goes straight from its run-up to the big bad itself, Tageri, as my Steam achievements tell me. These last words may be spoken from the boss itself, I'm simply not sure.
I made you alive so that you can walk along the right way. But can't you understand it?
Well, there's nothing to misunderstand about this bit. It certainly looks worthy of a final encounter. This net-like structure of alternating colors will fan out in a way that guarantees the player's going to have to do some tricky switching just to navigate, much less actually land your shots. Meanwhile, you have more popcorn flying at you, forcing constant readjustments that could easily send you into a lethal spot. Ideally, you go into this with full energy so you can take out one head immediately, but either way, your best bet is planting yourself a good distance below one of your targets, absorbing 2 rows of shots simultaneously while firing back with abandon. This section doesn't have to last long if you can make good use of your charge. The main challenge here is being very deliberate with your movement and making constant micro adjustments unless you're doing well, in which case the game's adaptive difficulty kicks in. Yeah, so the bonus ships from before were one example, but this game actually has a few spots that could be considered to have adaptive difficulty, which is shocking considering how rigid this thing initially appears. This might only apply to the final boss. It's the only part of the game where I've been able to notice this happening, but certain attacks only come out if you stay alive for long enough. This game was hard enough as is, but there's a really terrifying feeling when you start doing better than you've ever done against the final boss, only to learn that it's been holding back against you this entire time. It's actually very effective, and considering this will only affect players who put in the time to get this good in the first place, is an incredibly worthwhile challenge to include. So your first instance comes right here if you start getting too comfortable. Go without dying for too long, and one of the heads will charge up and fire a homing shot at you without much warning. This thing has enough tracking to force you to do some tricky flying to avoid it. It's anything but impossible, but with the minefield surrounding you, your evasive maneuvers will likely get you killed. Navigate well enough, and you're on to the second phase. Once you survive the death web, you can face the rare double lightning snake. This might have been the single most difficult part of the run for me to perform deathless even once. There's simply so much going on despite the deceptively simple strat I've figured out. Okay, so these two heads start spawning invincible drones which leave behind lightning trails wherever they move. Naturally, they home in on you, adjusting their approach as you flee, creating a hell of your own making that you will soon be forced to retreat into. These drones will intermittently speed up and slow down, further forcing you to adapt while also dodging shotgun blasts of slow-moving projectiles. You really want to go into this with full energy. You want to face the double lightning snake for as little time as physically possible. If you die to this thing once, something inside your spirit breaks and you will die again and again and again. Like the first piss several hours into a long night of drinking, the seal has been broken and the deaths will flow. The game will eventually have mercy and start spawning the drones at a slower rate, giving you more room to work with, but being thrown off your rhythm even a little here is disastrous. All I can tell you is to make very large, slow, circular movements, try to absorb the lightning trails whenever you can, and only release your charge shots when they will do double damage to your target. Good luck and Godspeed.
It is impossible to cast this metempsychosis further. You can also see it, can't you?
Metempsychosis, for the uninitiated, is the transmigration of souls. Not sure who or what we're preventing from Nording whom, but that's okay. It's time to shoot Yoko Taro's big round meme head, except it's got a weird cancer growth on it or something. I'm not entirely sure what it is we're looking at here. This wave of light shots is easy to see coming and basically guarantees that you'll be on the correct shield just in time for a round of familiar homing lasers to blindside you. Before you can fully comprehend that the boss just used your own move on you, Tageri does the one thing we've been doing all game, the one thing that made us unique, that made us special. It switches colors. Because the beams home in on you, your only real option is to switch in time and absorb them all. Tageri switches, it fires, it switches again, it fires again, faster and faster, pumping out more and more popcorn to try and throw you off your game. The longer you survive, the faster it gets, the more cluttered the screen becomes. As you start to master this section, surviving longer, the adaptive difficulty becomes really rewarding. You feel like this thing is throwing absolutely everything it has at you. This section is so frantic and desperate and makes me feel like my taint is millimeters away from the blade of a katana. Absorb, switch, release, repeat, all in one fluid motion, again and again, faster and faster. Absorb, switch, release, dodge the popcorn. Absorb, switch, release, dodge the popcorn. Whittle down each and every one of those health bars until... Tageri erupts. You and an abstract crystal thing surrounded by runes ascend through one final techno-tube, and as you prepare to bring this game to a climax, the same words from the start are echoed back to you. Thus, achieve your mission without any regrets. I will not die until I achieve something. Even though the ideal is high, I never give in. Therefore, I never die with regrets. We were supposed to understand it. Can we see the liberty and freedom? Release the suppressor device. Consequently, machine gun fire is unable. I assume that this is really beautiful in its native language. I mainly just get a chuckle out of it, but I'm still happy with that. It's a nice way to ground off. Oh God, what is that? So, as you've just been informed, machine gun fire is unable, leaving you to just survive the next 60 seconds through pure movement and switching. You have 3 phases to pacifist your way through. This first one is a really beautiful sort of atomic pattern created by 2 crisscrossing spirals of shots. I can make it through the first few seconds with just a figure 8 movement, but eventually the 2 colors start overlapping and you're going to have to switch and get a little deeper in. This works almost identically to the lightning spiral from earlier, only there's that adaptive difficulty again. If you stay alive, these interceptor shots start spawning. They conform to your movements and prevent you from getting into too comfortable a rhythm, and if you stay alive, they persist through the next phase, so get used to them. Up next, the central crystal hacks up the playing field into different slices with alternating beams of electricity. These aren't much of an issue and more of just a border to your safe zone. You won't have to interact with them just yet. The real challenge here comes from the rings of spinning orbs the crystal fires out at you, always in bursts of 2, with the white orbs moving much faster than the black ones. It's a matter of timing. You need to switch and inch your way forward with a sort of limp. Change over to black, dart forward, immediately switch back to white, and pull back as far as you can because that next wave is coming faster than you think. Switch to black for just long enough to make it past the next ring of orbs and continue the process, all while dodging interceptor shots designed to trip you up. Switch, dash forward, switch, pull back, faster and faster, again and again. This is easy and I'm not losing my shit at all. Your final challenge is one of precision movement and preemptive bullet eating. The lightning dividers surrounding your target begin to move, all while the rings of orbs begin to slow down and overlap. You do need to make it through these rings, otherwise you'll be pushed to the edge of the screen with nowhere to run, so you need to sneak your way through these very tiny windows of safe space. No matter what you do, your flight path will intersect with a bullet, so you just have to hope you're absorbing it and not dying to it. The most consistent way I've found to do this is to get right up to the next wave and shave away one color, pull back and immediately switch, then charge forward through the gap you just created. If you just try and wait for a natural gap in the pattern, you will end up getting caught by the lightning with nowhere to run, but there are no interceptor shots in this phase, just a denser barrage the longer you survive, so you can at least maintain a solid rhythm. Push forward, switch, pull back, wait a second, switch, dash forward, take the opportunity to cross over the lightning now so you don't have to later. Readjust, switch, push forward, switch, pull back. The circles are getting denser. You have to pass through the lightning with greater frequency. Pull back, wait, dash forward in the tiny window you're given, and then the circles break. You're free. You're in the clear. All that's left is a couple easy switches on the final few passes from the lightning. Fuck! This is truly a worthy final challenge. No way to speed it up. The deed is already done. You're not making it out of this. All you can do is meticulously internalize and form plans for utterly hellish patterns and bullet strafed like you've never bullet strafed before. I managed to independently clear in isolation each and every other section of this game deathless at least once before I was finally able to crack this last 60 seconds in its entirety. It was the final barrier to allowing me to actually visualize being able to pull off a deathless run of the entire game, something I'm still far off from being able to accomplish, but it'll happen. Eventually, it always happens. Your ship rises, critically damaged, overflowing with stored energy. In one final, decisive action, it releases everything it's built up over this mad scramble for survival, taking down the enemy core and falling alongside it. The sun rises over the tree line as birds crest into view. The battle is won, and credits roll. No matter how many deaths you suffered getting here, no matter how many times the game humbled you, you saw it through. And that's worth plenty in and of itself. It's a good game. It's a really good game. A game I've put roughly 250 hours into, one in which I've gotten an achievement that less than 1% of players have. A game wherein I still find myself shockingly, hilariously, embarrassingly out of my depth. One with a combo system that looms omnipresent yet impenetrable over me like the world's least consequential great old one. And that existentially terrifies me.
This job is time consuming, especially if you want to do it well. As of now, I have over 100 hours in Dust Force with a couple of levels left unfinished. I spent months producing 3-hour commentaries to Devil May Cry and Beautiful Joe while learning new things about them right the way to the end. It took me over 200 hours just to play Breath of the Wild enough to do a review, and the Legend of Zelda series has nearly 20 mainline installments by now.
That was a clip from Meta Micro Videos, a masterpiece of a video by Metempsychosis, the channel that initially inspired the thought of one day doing long-form video essays of my own. And he gives voice to a lot of the anxieties I hold about the vague prospect of critiquing video games. And by the way, I am not trying to devolve this into a notice me senpai moment or anything. I am trying to be fucking elegant. You see, games take an inordinate amount of time, not only to beat, but to understand, to master. You can casually play through a game and enjoy it just fine, but if you want to appreciate it on the level of its most ardent fans, if you want to see how it might have influenced later games, if you want to comprehend the hidden lore, you are sending yourself down an unthinkable rabbit hole. A deeper understanding of a film can be formed over a rewatch or two, but I played this one game every single day for well over a year at this point, and I still can't get through the thing without getting sploded, lasered, multi-blorbed, lightning snaked, or just generally dicked on. Hell, because I have continues activated, I don't even have a recorded high score of this game, despite OneCoin clearing it multiple times. My lack of mastery over so much of this game makes this video still feel woefully incomplete as an in-depth examination of Ikaruga, and there's no but to that sentence. My 500 plus runs of Ikaruga and the dozens of hours I've spent on this very video have essentially been an exercise in fundamental, cosmic insignificance. But that doesn't mean we can't gain anything from it. A casual playthrough of a game can be fulfilling, but even if you just dip your toe into the weird world of speedrunning, competition, challenge runs, or just something that's stupid bullshit hard, you'll be shocked at how much you can get out of it. It's humbling and eye-opening to be shown just how floundering of an idiot baby gamer you are, and speaking personally, Ikaruga forced me to confront my own inadequacies constantly. I've done this shit 500 times. I know how it works. How am I still dying? It's so easy. Doesn't it look so easy?
You are great.
Thank you. And the constancy of this self-flagellative activity definitely affected my approach to more than just video games. As it turns out, willfully subjecting yourself to something that you will, by necessity, repeatedly fail at can have its perks. I'd wanted to make videos for years, but time and technology and general circumstances kept getting in the way until I was finally able to afford this here PC, a monster of a rig that immediately demanded some fresh new games to really flex that NVIDIA, like a Dreamcast game from 2001. I wanted something I could quickly pick up and play, but that was mainly as a way to decompress from learning the ins and outs of Premiere Pro. It was only once I'd started getting comfortably into the swing of video editing that I committed to the daily playthroughs, and around that time I went back to Metamicro videos for some inspiration, only to learn that Metempsychosis had gone on hiatus, leaving that video to serve as, more or less, a farewell to his channel. Since then, he has put out a new video, but his main focus, as I found out back then, was now entering the world of game development. He shared this playlist of game music he kept returning to while slaving away down in the coding mines, and the first track therein was none other than Ikaruga. Chapter 1. Ideal. Huh? You see? Full circle. Elegant. Fuck you! This game has been a constant companion with me throughout my entire journey into the strange and nebulous realm that is content creation, and I think I've been better off for it. The aforementioned sensation of being completely out of your depth with no real idea how to even begin learning? Yeah, it's probably good that I was used to that. The idea of persevering through constant failures and setbacks and plateaus of your progress? Also probably pretty valid. Playing a semi-obscure, 2-decade-old masterpiece from a mostly dead genre every day for an arbitrary amount of time is a challenge of questionable value with dubious, likely non-existent reward, but so is being a weird fucking low-poly VTubesman, so this game has been like a background-only training arc to me. Dying repeatedly to the same boss or enemy on stream doesn't faze me nearly as much as it would have if I wasn't used to dying 20, 30, 50 times within the span of half an hour in Ikaruga. Trying to figure out a new editing technique I want to use for a specific cut doesn't seem nearly as insurmountable now that I've applied a similarly obtuse and granular learning process to ridiculously designed boss fights. This entire time, from the day I installed Premiere Pro to the eventual release of this video, even if I didn't get any editing done or had a below average stream, in the back of my mind, I knew that I was still building towards something, that these daily playthroughs would amount to, at the very least, a feature-length thing on YouTube that I could be proud of, regardless of how much or little attention it gets. The satisfaction of being able to say, hey, I actually did that. And I just think that's neat. But it's also a curse I've been eager to be freed from. As stated before, I couldn't record voiceover for a hot minute, and thus, the recording and editing of this thing took far longer than I originally anticipated, and I kept playing every day throughout. I'm a little bit tired. I need a break. I'm still going to play Ikaruga. It's a good game and somehow still really fun even after, all of this. I might not fire it up every day, I can say with confidence, in fact, that I fucking won't, but it's a really engaging way to kill half an hour, and at the very least, whenever I stream on Twitch, my chat can force me to drop everything and play through Ikaruga on the spot, which... I just did this last stream. Oh! I did this last stream, but it wasn't at chat's will, so it's not on cooldown!
Hail Satan!
Hail Satan, we're gonna play Ikaruga. I actually tied my current record of 2 deaths on stream, which might be the single most impressive thing I've accomplished on that channel in the year plus I've been streaming so far. That's gotta count for something. I'm not totally escaping from this game anytime soon, but I don't particularly want to. There's always more to explore. Hell, if I really wanted to learn more about the game, I could look up info about its plot and characters, which it has, apparently. I made this whole thing and didn't look up any of it. But the game does have a gallery, and admittedly, all of this art fucks way harder than it needs to. And the characters really do look cool. I mean, look at this guy over here. He's not Regret. And you know what? Neither am I.